One of the areas I think that for improvement is the need to work more closely with researchers, for example, like ourselves. As I said previously, we have a lot of learning resources available, and that just because a project ends, that doesn't mean that that information should be put on a shelf. That information is there and widely available, and we'd be more than happy to share or for educators to access the material. And again, also to look at working more closely with social enterprises themselves. The DU is all about problem solving, real life problem solving. And, what better way than to maybe get students to work on a real life problem issue with a social enterprise. And, that immersive education, that they will have a better grasp then of not only what a social enterprise is about, but also some of the difficulties that social enterprises come up against. For example, governance structures, funding restrictions, etc. That, to experience it in real life is much, makes more of an impact than just learning the theory in the classroom.
I think it's something that's needed, right? So a part of kind of my journey with social innovation that we didn't discuss was that I worked for Enactus Ireland for 6 years between 2014 and 2019, or 2013 and 2019, apologies. And one of Enactus Ireland's goals is to develop socially conscious leaders through social enterprise. And I think that's the thing, right? So if you're teaching it in the classroom, if you're doing those things, not everyone's going to be an entrepreneur, not everyone's going to be a social entrepreneur, but they are learning about the mindsets behind social innovation. They're hearing about social inequalities, and they mightn't want to go set up their own company, but they can go and be a social entrepreneur in a company that they go to work for. And that's just as important. If they go and work for a massive conglomerate and for solving a certain societal issue with social innovation within that company, that's massive, because the influence they can have will go towards solving that issue 10 times more than any other traditional way if they hadn't got that experience within the classroom. So I think it's vital, and I think you need to be looking at it from an enterprise point of view, but also what are the paths these students are going to be on once they leave DCU, and what is the thing you want them to take with them.
We talked a lot about awareness and sort of recognition of social enterprise, but actually the first thing is cognition, is understanding that it's even there. And I think that universities, and in fairness, there's already fantastic work happening across universities, but more can be done. I think universities need to feature and consider social enterprise in how they develop their own strategies, not just curriculum development. That's really important. But going back to the pillars I mentioned earlier around the teaching, the learning, the research, and the community engagement piece. All of those areas. I think that these are just critically important that social enterprise is considered by universities in that regard. And also, I would caution against siloing. Like there's, and I understand what it's, how universities naturally group, or how would you say, topics are within one school or another typically. But for topics such as social innovation, social entrepreneurship, and social enterprise, it's not, I think, enough to focus on that in the social policy school, or the business school, or the management school, or the law school. I think there's an opportunity for us to have a much broader kind of understanding and representation of the topic across the system. But I would say the first step is for universities to actually reflect on social enterprises being part of the entrepreneurship ecosystem and the impact ecosystem, and then really think about planning how they engage across all four pillars across the university.
In DCU, for argument's sake, I would argue that there is a role for each of your faculties, the engineering, the science, the arts, to promote social innovation within their disciplines, because that then will transfer outside DCU and third level into communities where the engineer who is a graduate of DCU and the scientist, they will be familiar with social innovation, social entrepreneurship. It won't be an alien concept to them. And so they'll be able to apply their engineering skills, their science skills through a social innovation for the betterment of their local community. So academia has a key role to play as well in the whole development of social enterprise. For me, social innovation is not linear and may not be time bound. And I know my family members are lecturers, so I know you're on a calendar and you've got to get things done by certain dates. So I would promote and propose that social innovation would be encouraged, and that students who participated in social innovation would be rewarded for thinking outside the box and for giving it a go. And it's too ambitious to expect somebody going through an academic course to set up a social enterprise. But what if they volunteered with a social enterprise and their learnings from that gave them marks as part of their academic course? That might be something interesting. And also, social innovation is about experience, and it's about bringing your experience to the table to find a solution. It's not always about success on day one. So I would ask that if somebody participates in volunteering or social work or community work, that they will be given marks and recognition for that, as opposed to maybe grading a script around or writing up on the theory of social innovation.
I think peer-to-peer stuff isn't done as well as it should be in university. So I think the typical style of the students are there and they look up at the board and they talk to them is what we've adopted. But we haven't sat around and said, is that the best approach? Maybe we have, I don't know. But my general sense of it is, from other stuff I've been involved in throughout college, but mainly after college, I've learned a huge amount through peer-to-peer work. So instead of everyone sitting in a line looking up, put everyone in a circle and get everyone talking to each other and get everyone sharing their own experiences, get everyone sharing their own ideas. And if you can facilitate group discussion, people are much more engaged. Like, I'm much more engaged on this call because I'm doing all the talking. So, you know, you're much more engaged and you're much more invested in something if you're talking and if you're actively participating in it. And I think that advice probably sticks true for people in teams as well, in your startup. You know, especially when you're starting out, you might find there might be a lot of ego, or there might be a lot of really strong opinions. If you can get people to develop listening skills and peer-to-peer skills where it's supportive, it's cooperative, and people are learning and bouncing ideas off each other and really being open and honest in how they feel and think about things, that can be a much more engaging way of getting people to kind of open up and to take on the knowledge. And then, you know, obviously you need to facilitate or take that in if it's an academic piece of work, it needs to be taken in a certain direction. But I still think you can achieve those academic goals or those learning goals through that peer-to-peer process.
I think there's a fascination about social enterprise at the moment, which has, I think it's been building gradually, and there's been a lot of work by different stakeholders to sort of create that awareness of what it is. So I think it's critically important. I think that it becomes embedded in our education system that students understand what social enterprise is, because I think there's still I still get questions from people saying, like, can you pay people in GOI? Like, what, you know, they don't like it. There's a very mixed understanding of what it is. But I think it's so I think there's still a lot of educating that needs to happen about that. And third level is such a brilliant, you know, it's such a brilliant forum for students to sort of do projects and consider what it means to be a social enterprise. And any time, I mean, even in second level, we ran some programs around food growing, but with a sort of entrepreneurial focus. And like students are just, you know, they're really clued into, I suppose, what's important about a mission-based brand. They're very aware of the sort of bigger picture sustainability issues and so on. So I think the time is absolutely right. But I think like we need to get away from this thinking that social enterprises are just like, you know, a charity that starts, you know, opens a clothes shop or a cafe. Like I think we need to sort of really get into the nitty-gritty of what it means to, as you said, disrupt systems from the ground up, you know, create viable businesses that even for-profit businesses, because I think, you know, as I said earlier on, I think that's an area where there's a hugely interesting future, particularly with the B Corp world and some of those big brands like Innocent and Patagonia and so on that have become B Corps and are just absolutely, you know, I think that has the potential to really transform the business world as well, you know. So I think it's a really important thing that it's embedded in third level and it's being taught properly, you know.